Hey, welcome back to Crafting Chaos. Starting a brand new build tonight, actually. Thinking something coastal, maybe a little jungle cottage situation. We'll see where it goes. But first, I need to tell you about a woman who ghosted her own wedding. Not called it off, not postponed it, ghosted it. Did not show up, did not answer her phone, just vanished on her wedding day. And the reason why is going to completely flip how you feel about this story halfway through, so stick with me. This is titled, Am I the ATA for not showing up to my own wedding and disappearing for 2 days without telling anyone? So she and her fiancé had been together 4 years, engaged for one of those. By all accounts, she says things seemed fine. Not perfect, but fine. The kind of fine where you don't examine anything too closely, because examining things feels like inviting problems that don't exist yet. Wedding planning had been stressful, obviously. Wedding planning is always stressful, but nothing that felt like an actual red flag. At least nothing she let herself look directly at. She talks a lot in the post about how, looking back, there were small things. He'd get weirdly protective of his phone the last few months, always face down, always in his pocket, even at home. He started going to the gym at times that didn't quite line up with when he said he was going. Small stuff. The kind of stuff you explain away because the alternative is too big to hold. Okay, now let's get some stone and coal. Lovely. Very cozy little life, which is exactly what she thought she was building too, so we'll see how that goes for both of us, I guess. So the night before the wedding, she's at the venue doing final setup with her mom and her maid of honor, steam ironing the table runners, checking the seating chart for the 40th time. Normal pre-wedding chaos. And at some point, she goes to grab a phone charger out of her fiancé's overnight bag because he'd left it in the room they were prepping for the morning of photos. And while she's digging through it, an iPad in the bag lights up with a notification. His phone had synced to it at some point, probably months ago. Probably without either of them thinking about it. And now here's this message thread, just sitting right there on the lock screen. Not a vague, ambiguous message either. An ongoing conversation. Active. Recent. With someone who, based on what she could see just from the notification alone, clearly believed he was the one about to end things with his fiancé, not marry her the next day. She said she stood there for a second, just staring at it. And then she picked up the iPad, which, fair, not exactly ethical, but I think we can give her a pass given the circumstances, and started scrolling. She said she read maybe 20 messages before she physically had to put it down and go throw up in the venue bathroom. The night before her wedding. 20 guests still milling around the reception hall at that point, decorating, laughing, completely unaware. Getting more wood, looking good. Later, I will have to calculate the proportions of our build before I commit to anything. Unlike, apparently, everyone in tonight's story who committed to some pretty big things without thinking it through. So here's where it gets complicated, because she didn't confront him that night. She says she genuinely could not form words. Every instinct in her body was telling her to run, not talk, not process, just get away from the situation entirely until her brain caught up with what her body already understood. So she went back to her hotel room, told her mom and maid of honor she wasn't feeling well, probably nerves, needed to sleep it off. And then she just sat there all night. Didn't sleep, didn't cry really, just sat on the edge of the hotel bed staring at the wall, replaying every weird phone habit and gym excuse from the last few months, and watching them all click into place with horrible clarity. And the next morning, instead of getting ready for hair and makeup, she packed a bag, left her phone behind on the nightstand, specifically so nobody could track her or reach her, and drove 2 hours to her sister's place. Did not tell a single soul where she was going. Meanwhile, full wedding. 120 guests. Caterer already set up. Florist had delivered that morning. String quartet warming up. The whole machine already in motion. And no bride anywhere to be found. She said her mom eventually called the police because she was so genuinely terrified something had happened. Some kind of accident, some kind of abduction, anything other than the truth, which was that her daughter had simply made a choice and left. Where should we build? Wow, this place is beautiful, very peaceful. Very much the opposite energy of 120 confused wedding guests standing around wondering where the bride went. She turned her phone back on 2 days later, back at her sister's, finally ready to face what she'd have to face. Hundreds of messages waiting. Some from friends, frantic, worried, sick. Some from her fiancé. And she says you can actually track the emotional arc of his messages over those 2 days just by reading them in order. Starts confused, then annoyed, then genuinely angry, accusing her of being cruel, of humiliating him in front of everyone. Then, eventually, once enough time passed with no response, the messages just stopped. Silence for almost a full day before she turned her phone on. When she finally called him, she says she didn't even yell, didn't accuse him of anything right away, just asked him flat out who the person on the iPad was. And she said the silence on the other end of that call told her everything before he even said a word. He eventually admitted it. Didn't deny the length of it either. Months, he said. On and off, sometimes more serious than others. Kept saying over and over that he'd been planning to end it before the wedding. Like that detail was supposed to make any of this better. Like the timeline of his guilt mattered more than the fact that he let 120 people show up to watch him marry someone while actively involved with someone else the night before. She's asking whether she was wrong to disappear like that, instead of just calling off the wedding like a normal, functioning person would. Given how much money her family lost on a wedding that never happened, given how terrified everyone was when they couldn't reach her, given that her mother called the actual police. And look, I want to be fair here, because I do think there's a real conversation to be had about the disappearing part specifically. Her mom was terrified, and that's not nothing. That's a real cost to real people who loved her and did nothing wrong. But finding that out, alone, the night before your wedding, with zero support system immediately available, I don't think there's a graceful, composed way to process that in real time. Sometimes your brain just short circuits completely, and self-preservation looks a lot like running without a plan. Okay, I already know a huge chunk of you are going to want the full update on this one, where things stand with her family now, whether she and her mom have talked it through. So stick around, because we're going to circle back to this later tonight, and it actually gets more interesting. Okay, next one. And this is a slow burn too, so get comfortable. This one's titled, "Am I the asshole for telling my in-laws the truth about why the wedding venue got canceled, instead of letting my fiance's mom take the blame off herself and put it on me?" So she's engaged, wedding's about 8 months out at the start of this story, and her future mother-in-law has been involved in the planning from day one. Not asked to be involved, just involved. Opinions on the flowers, opinions on the guest list, opinions on the actual date, which, if you have strong opinions on someone else's wedding date that isn't your wedding, maybe examine why. More coal now, beautiful, unlike this whole in-law situation, which is very much not that. She and her fiancé had specifically chosen one particular venue because it's where his late father used to take the family for special occasions growing up. So it wasn't just a nice building. It had real emotional weight behind it. It mattered to him specifically in a way that no other venue could really replace. Deposit gets paid, contracts get signed, everything's booked and confirmed. Then, about 4 months out, she gets an email from the venue saying the booking's been canceled due to non-payment. Except every payment had been made, on time, every single time. And she's got the bank statements to prove it. She calls the venue, confused, and it turns out someone had called them directly, claiming to be her, requesting a full cancellation and refund, citing a change in wedding plans. Following their own policy, the venue processed it, refunded the deposit, and released the date to another couple. She never made that call, never authorized it. So who did? Still getting some materials for the build. definitely more careful thought went into this than went into whoever made that phone call. Turns out the card on file was actually the mother-in-law's, because she'd insisted on paying the deposit herself early on as a gift, which at the time seemed generous. But that also made her the account holder with the venue, meaning she was the one who could legally request changes. And once they got the venue to pull the recorded call and verify the voice, it was her. The mother-in-law had personally called and canceled her son's wedding at his late father's meaningful venue with zero warning to anyone.
Her fiancé, she said, was in actual shock, kept insisting maybe it was a mistake, maybe someone hacked the account, anything other than accepting his own mother had just done this deliberately. But there was a recorded call. No ambiguity left. So they confront her. And instead of any real explanation, she says, direct quote apparently, "I just don't think this venue was right for you two. I was trying to help you see that before it was too late." Help? By secretly canceling a wedding 4 months out with no conversation at all? It gets worse, though. At a family dinner shortly after, the mother-in-law tries to spin the story completely, tells the extended family it was actually a joint decision between her and her son, that they discussed reconsidering the venue together, and she was simply helping move things along. Straight up lying to an entire table of family to avoid taking responsibility for what she did. And the bride was not about to let that lie sit there uncontested. Right at the table, she pulls out her phone, plays the actual voicemail from the venue confirming the cancellation request and reading back the account holder's name. Out loud, in front of everyone. Mother-in-law reportedly left the dinner early, humiliated, and things have been tense between her and her son ever since. Some relatives are saying playing that recording in front of everyone went too far, that she should have handled it privately instead of embarrassing her future mother-in-law like that. She's asking if she was wrong to expose the truth that publicly, instead of quietly correcting the record without the actual recording. Personally, no. If someone's willing to lie to your face in front of your entire family to avoid consequences for secretly sabotaging your wedding, I don't think you owe them the dignity of letting that lie stand uncorrected. She didn't fabricate a single thing. She just made sure the truth couldn't be spun anymore. Good news is they did find a new venue eventually. Not quite as sentimental, but she says the wedding still turned out beautiful. And honestly, this story's probably going to outlive the venue itself as the thing they talk about for the next 30 years. All right, quick pause on the stories. This episode might just be an episode of getting materials. Next episode, I think we tackle the actual building, set the proportions, dimensions, maybe start thinking about a little dock going out toward the water. Anyway, back to the chaos. Okay, next one. This is titled AITA for exposing my boss's affair in the company group chat and getting him put on leave when I was really just trying to get credit for my own work. So she's worked at this mid-sized marketing company for about 3 years. Decent job, generally likes her team. Her boss, though, married, 2 kids, very public, devoted family man persona at every company event, always talking about coaching his son's Little League team, has apparently been having an affair with someone on another team for months. Everyone kind of low-key knew, office rumor mill being what it is. Nobody said anything directly because, hey, not their business, not their marriage. She said she genuinely didn't care about that part. Truly, people's personal lives are their own mess to sort out. Her problem started somewhere else entirely. My pickaxe is about to break any second now. How do I get out of this place? Her problem is that her boss started taking credit for her work. Not once, not a misunderstanding, repeatedly, deliberately, in front of upper management, presenting her campaign strategies, her client pitches, as his own original thinking in meetings she wasn't even invited to. She brings it up to him privately, professionally, no accusations, just, hey, I noticed the Marchetti presentation used my deck. I'd appreciate credit going forward. And he brushes her off completely. Basically implies she should be grateful for the opportunity to contribute to his projects.
his projects that she built from scratch. This goes on for months. She starts documenting everything: timestamps, drafts, email chains, proving she originated the ideas he's presenting as his own. Building a case, essentially, because at some point she realizes talking to him directly isn't going to change anything. Today might just be a full day of mining. I kind of like mining, though. Feels very peaceful to me. Nothing like today's Reddit stories, geez.
So here's where it all collides. One afternoon, in the general company-wide Slack channel, not a small team channel, the entire company, 80-some people, someone accidentally forwards a message clearly meant for the other woman into the wrong thread. Very intimate, very much not meant for 80 coworkers to see. Chaos immediately starts brewing in the chat. People reacting, some confused, some clearly already suspecting what was going on.
And in that moment, with everyone's attention already on her boss for an entirely different reason, she makes a decision. She doesn't say anything crazy, doesn't even mention the affair at all, just quietly types into the same public channel. Interesting timing, since the Marchetti and Renner projects he's been presenting as his own this quarter are actually mine. Happy to share the original files and timestamps if anyone in leadership wants to see them. That's it. That's all she said. But the context of the moment, everyone already watching that channel, already primed for scandal, meant her message landed like a bomb. HR got involved within the hour. Her boss was put on leave pending a full investigation, officially over the affair optics with a subordinate on another team, but she said once people started actually looking into things, the credit stealing came out too, fully backed by her documentation, and that ended up being a much bigger factor in what happened to him long-term than the personal relationship stuff. Oh Lord, this is going to be a long day of mining. I'm not even sure why I'm mining this much copper. She's asking if she went too far, essentially piggybacking her own grievance onto a completely unrelated scandal instead of continuing to go through proper channels on her own. And I get the instinct to ask that. It wasn't exactly the textbook HR-approved move, but she'd already tried the proper channel, privately, professionally, for months, and got dismissed every time. At some point, when the private route keeps failing, using the moment that's already available to you isn't manipulative. It's just finally being heard. Okay, last main story tonight, keeping the energy going with this one. It's called AITA for telling my sister she can't wear a nearly identical dress to mine at my wedding, and for uninviting her when she refused to change it. So she's getting married, has her dress picked out months in advance. Very specific, mermaid silhouette, off the shoulder, a very intentional, considered choice she'd been dreaming about, honestly, since she was a teenager. Her sister is one of her bridesmaids, close relationship overall, no history of major conflict between them before this. About 3 months before the wedding, she finds out, not from her sister directly, from their mom, which is its own small red flag, that the sister has been dress shopping for herself for a completely separate event, a work gala happening exactly 2 weeks before the wedding. And the dress she picked is, by every description, nearly identical in style to the wedding dress. Same silhouette, same off-the-shoulder neckline, similar color family. And this is probably another pickaxe gone. Yep, this cave is massive. Holy. Now, on its own, different events, different rooms, who'd even notice? Except the sister is fairly active on social media, and a good chunk of the wedding guest list follows her, which means a significant number of people are going to see the bride's dress, essentially, on someone else 2 full weeks before the actual wedding. Every photo from that gala is going to look, to anyone scrolling, eerily similar to bridal photos. She asks her sister gently if she'd consider picking something else for the gala, explains exactly why. No accusations, just a reasonable one-time request given the timing and the guest overlap. And the sister refuses outright, says she's not changing her whole outfit for an event that isn't even the wedding, and accuses her of being controlling and self-centered, of thinking everything has to revolve around her. This causes a genuine rift. Their mom gets stuck in the middle, tries to smooth things over, suggests maybe the bride's being a little sensitive given wedding stress. The bride pushes back, says this isn't wedding stress. This is one specific, reasonable ask being flatly refused out of what feels like spite. Roughly a week before the gala, still no resolution. Sister still hasn't budged. And the bride makes the call to uninvite her from being a bridesmaid entirely. Tells her she's welcome to attend as a regular guest, but can't be part of the wedding party after refusing something this small. Yes, I am making some clay. Don't ask me why. You'll see in the next episode. It will all make sense. Anyway, the sister is, predictably, furious. Tells the rest of the family she's being punished over a piece of fabric, gets a couple of aunts sympathizing with her, saying the bride overreacted by removing her from the wedding party entirely instead of just letting the dress thing go. She's asking if uninviting her sister from the bridal party was too harsh a response to what was ultimately just a dress. And honestly, I don't think it was too harsh, given the context. It was never actually about the dress itself. It was about being asked one reasonable, specific thing and being flatly refused out of what reads a lot like resentment or a need to compete. When someone shows you they won't respect even a small, clearly explained boundary, removing them from a position of trust and responsibility isn't punishment. It's just adjusting expectations to match what they've already shown you about themselves.
Okay, one more for tonight, and this one's a doozy. It's called, Am I the a-hole for telling my roommate's boyfriend he needs to start paying rent since he's basically living here, and then reporting them to our landlord when they retaliated by damaging my stuff? So she's got this roommate, 2 years living together, always been completely fine. No drama, splitting rent and utilities right down the middle like clockwork. About 6 months ago, the roommate starts dating someone, and slowly, gradually, the way these things always seem to happen, he becomes a permanent fixture in the apartment. Toothbrush shows up in the shared bathroom first, then a drawer's worth of clothes in the closet. Then he's just there, constantly. Eating groceries neither of them bought for him, using the Wi-Fi, the electricity, all of it. She said she genuinely wasn't bothered by him being around at first. People date, that's normal life, that's not a problem. But she started actually tracking it out of curiosity more than anything, and realized over one particular month, he'd slept over 26 out of 30 nights. 26! That's not a guest anymore. That's a third tenant who happens to not be on the lease and doesn't contribute a single dollar.
Going deeper in the cave now. This cave actually looks great, very charming. Very much the opposite energy of a boyfriend eating someone else's groceries for 6 months straight without so much as a thank you. So she brings it up to her roommate directly, tries to be as chill and reasonable about it as possible. Says something like, hey, I think it's probably time he starts chipping in for rent or utilities, given how much he's actually here now. That's not really a big ask at this point. And her roommate gets immediately defensive, accuses her of being dramatic and controlling, insists he's not living there. He's just around a lot, and offers up the genuinely baffling defense that he's not eating that much. He is. He very much is eating that much. That's kind of the whole point of the conversation.
The roommate, instead of actually considering it, goes and tells the boyfriend exactly what was said, word for word apparently, which was never the intention. She just wanted a conversation between the two of them about splitting costs fairly. Now things are awkward with him too. He starts giving her the cold shoulder whenever he's over, which again, given the 26 out of 30 night situation, is most days at this point.
Okay, now we're just cooking some iron. Lovely. So here's where it escalates into something genuinely unhinged. About 2 weeks after that conversation, she comes home from a weekend trip to find her room slightly disturbed. Nothing stolen, but a few things clearly moved. And her favorite jacket, a genuinely expensive one she'd saved up for, has a large, deliberate-looking stain on it that wasn't there before she left. She asks her roommate about it. Roommate denies knowing anything, gets weirdly defensive way too fast for someone with nothing to hide.
She checks the apartment's shared camera.
They'd installed one by the front door ages ago for package deliveries. Nothing invasive, just the entryway. And finds footage of the boyfriend letting himself into the apartment alone while her roommate was still at work, using a key he apparently was never supposed to have in the first place, spending almost 40 minutes inside before leaving. Is it just me, or does anyone else love amethyst geodes? They're so cool. I just find it pretty hard to build things with it sometimes.
She's furious, obviously. Confronts her roommate with the footage. Roommate finally admits she'd given him a key for emergencies months ago without ever mentioning it, and insists there's no way he'd have done anything to her jacket. Must be a coincidence. So she does something a lot of people in the comments were split on. She reports the situation to their landlord directly. Not the jacket specifically, but the fact that an unauthorized person has apparently had a key to the unit for months and has been effectively residing there without being on the lease, which is technically a lease violation. Landlord takes it seriously, sends a formal notice reminding both listed tenants that only people on the lease are permitted regular access, and that any additional long-term occupant needs to either be added to the lease with appropriate rent adjustment or stop staying there regularly. This obviously blows the whole situation wide open. Roommate is livid, accuses her of trying to get her boyfriend kicked out and going nuclear over what should have stayed a private roommate conversation. The boyfriend, predictably, denies touching the jacket at all. Says it's a coincidence, gets defensive about being accused of anything. All right, guys, I'm getting a little tired of getting materials.
She's asking if she went too far by involving the landlord formally instead of just continuing to try to work it out directly with her roommate, especially since she can't 100% prove he damaged the jacket specifically. And honestly, I don't think she went too far at all. She didn't accuse him of the jacket thing in her report to the landlord. She reported an actual documented lease violation, an unauthorized key holder essentially living in the unit, which is a completely separate factual issue, regardless of what did or didn't happen to a piece of clothing. The jacket incident is what pushed her to finally act, sure, but the thing she reported was true and verifiable. If the roommate's upset that formalizing the situation revealed how far things had actually gone, that's really a consequence of her own choices, not an overreaction on anyone else's part.
Okay, update time, because I promised we'd circle back, and it's worth it. So after the initial phone call where he admitted everything, she said there was this weird period of about 3 weeks where he kept trying to get her to talk it through properly, like sit down in person, work through it like adults. And at one point actually suggested, and I want you to really sit with this, that they could still get married, just, quote, later once things cooled down. As if the problem was ever the timing. As if she just needed a few more weeks to get less upset about active infidelity discovered 12 hours before their wedding. She said that suggestion alone told her everything she needed to know about whether he actually understood what he'd done.
The final straw, she says, came about a month after everything fell apart, when a mutual friend let it slip that the woman from the messages had this whole time believed he was single, and that she was the one who'd eventually be getting a proposal. Meaning he hadn't just been cheating. He'd been running 2 completely separate, parallel relationships, one of which involved an actual wedding with 120 guests and a florist and a string quartet, and the other of which involved someone who had no idea any of that existed. Mining. My fingers are low-key getting tired of all of this clicking and holding. She's since moved out of the apartment they shared completely, cut contact entirely. No in-between, no slow fade, just done. Her family, once they understood the full picture, not just she vanished, but she vanished because she found out this the night before, became completely supportive. Her mom especially, who said afterward that she wished her daughter had just told her in the moment because she would have helped her disappear more effectively, if anything. Funny enough, she says the vendors ended up being some of the most understanding people through the entire situation. Once she explained, several of them waived their cancellation fees entirely. One of them apparently said something like, "In 15 years of doing this, I've had exactly 1 bride vanish. And honestly, given what you're telling me, I don't blame you one bit." She ends the update saying she doesn't regret the 2 days of silence, doesn't regret leaving her phone behind, doesn't regret any of it, except one thing. She wishes she'd sent just one text to her mom specifically, saying, "I'm safe, don't call the police." Because that's the one piece of collateral damage that genuinely wasn't fair to the people who did nothing wrong.
All right, that's genuinely a wrap for tonight. I might have to go and complete all the materials off camera. Drop a comment letting me know which story had you the most unhinged tonight. I read every single one of them. Subscribe if you're new. It genuinely helps a ton. And Mike, if you're somehow still out there, still watching every video, still not subscribed, my guy, we're basically a running bit at this point. I respect the commitment. Thanks so much for hanging out. See y'all next time, where we actually start building.